Hey everyone, it's Boss Bafok here. Today I'm going to review this interesting knife from John Graham. It's a full custom and actually my only full custom. The reason I don't typically go for custom knives is that I find them to be, these one-offs to be quite finicky and truthfully not really delivering on performance. For me, much like my wine collection and my cigar collection, I'm all about consumption and use. And so I like a good action and a knife that really feels well in my pocket and in my hand while I'm busy using it. And so I typically stay away from full customs and focus on things like mid-tex and production knives. But what I will say is that I am a huge John Graham fanboy, although I only own one knife by John Graham. And that's because they're so tough to find, even on Arizona Custom Knives where they sell secondhand. When they do come up, they go really quickly. Out of the box, it looks pretty special. Comes in a really nice felt case, zippered felt case, and he also gave me an extra thumb disc. Comes with a blue anodized thumb disc to match the working side of the knife, the lock side, and then I've got the silver one if I ever want to replace it with the silver thumb disc. So that's that. It's a large knife. Although at the blade being 3 1/4 inches, it's a fairly large handle, which tends to make the knife itself feel a bit larger. For a guy like me who has a medium-large hand, it does feel bigger than your typical 3 1/4 inch knife. And it's really, I think, the substance of the thing that adds some heft to it. As mentioned, it's a full custom from the GL collection, being the Graham Large collection. A gorgeous clip point blade, as you can see here. Some nice flat section with a bit of belly, and we'll talk about the blade a little bit later on. It's a large handle comprising of 2 scales, a carbon fiber scale on the one side and a titanium working side, a titanium locking side over here. The carbon fiber show side is a beautiful mirror finished marble carbon fiber with a very high polish, with sort of giving a 3-dimensional sort of a pattern on here, with some blue in the inside, blue carbon fiber in the inside, accentuating that sort of 3-dimensional pattern, sort of a butterfly wing. And what it does is it tends to give some scale and added depth to the knife. I think this has a lot to do with the perception of size on the knife. The cutouts over here are wide and finished beautifully in line with the polishing of the flat surfaces. So I really like that with what he's done here in terms of how he's polished, and he's got some nice big swedges over here to allow for some ergonomics on the fingers. Feels very comfortable, polished sort of in line with the big flat surfaces of the carbon fiber. Does a really good job on that, I think. This then moves into a matching carbon fiber spacer. I'll get to that here. The carbon fiber spacers over here, and it actually appears seamless off of the carbon fiber show scale. You can't really see where the scale ends and the thumb stud, the spacer, sorry, actually begins, which is a wonderful detail and something I think you want to see in a customized knife. Then moving over to the titanium locking side, the working side of the knife. It's been finished in a consistent light blue, light purple anodization, very uniform, with a metallic tone to it that sparkles in the sunlight, adding to the 3-dimensionality, sort of the 3-dimensional tone and the perception of heft to the knife, I tend to find. The working side houses the frame lock with a generous lock bar cutout over here and a carbidized edge, lock bar edge. So as opposed to an insert, he's carbidized this, and with obviously no insert in it. When you unlock the Graham knife, it's absolutely seamless. Similar to my Grimsman Norseman, actually, you realize that there really shouldn't be any lock stick on a carbidized edge when it's done right. I mean, it's just absolutely beautifully done on this knife. For example, if I take another knife like my Spyderco sleeve buoy. It's also not a cheap knife. It's obviously nothing like the cost of a full custom. But if you listen here, very, very hard lock stick. Lock stick isn't something that typically bothers me. I'm not really sure why it bothers people. It doesn't bother me at all, but it is a thing. I mean, if you're paying that sort of a money, that sort of money, even on my Rask, here, if you listen, it's much slighter than the Swish buoy, but it's there. But really, as I say, when done right, there's no reason why that needs to be there. Then going back to the titanium side, the working side, the locking side, not a sharp edge on the knife, absolutely beautiful. In fact, I love the way he's matched sort of these swedges here on the titanium side to the same sort of swedges in the carbon fiber. Beautiful detail, very, very happy with that. What I can complain about is when unlocking the frame lock, as a result of the slipperiness, it is a very slippery, smooth, marbled polish on the edges of the show scale, and as a result of the lack of height of the titanium side, the working side, your fingers tend to want to slip off the edge when you're trying to unlock it. It's a sort of a hydraulic set feel to it, similar to what happens with the Chris Reeve, but it's a bit more pressure one is required, and because of the slipperiness, one's thumb tends to want to slip off. So I would have liked to see a bit more height here on the locking side, so that my thumb has something to hit against as it wants to slip off. So, as mentioned, the size is great at 3¼ inches. The blade weighs, the entire knife weighs about 3½ ounces, so about 1 ounce an inch. But it tends to feel as though it bats way above its weight. I do prefer the bigger knives, but this won't be one I'll be carrying in my suit pocket. I definitely need a smaller. It definitely needs to be smaller and lighter than that, at 1 ounce an inch. So let's talk about the clip for a second, just while we at that. Hands down, Graham clip is the best clip in the business. There is nothing else like it. Similar to how people have copied the Reeves integral lock, I can't understand why people haven't just copied the Graham clip, because it's brilliant. Why go and invent the wheel with things that just tear up your pants? I think that would be an obvious thing for me, but for some reason hasn't happened. So what's great about it also, it's not only the deepest of carry out there, it's not only the seamlessness of the clip that's so fantastic, and how it's so skinny, it just disappears from your sight, but for me it will never damage my pants. So that's a big deal for me. I'd be able to wear bigger knives actually in maybe not as big as this, but bigger knives in my suit pockets if they all had a clip, which was very much like the John Graham clip. It's just an absolute beauty. And the way he's finished this is fantastic. If you had to close your eyes and run your finger over here, you can't really tell where the clip, the surface of the clip meets the surface of the titanium. It's another beautiful attention to detail that he has. It's really fantastically done. Love this clip. So anyway, so that's it'll definitely not harm your pants, and I'm a big fan of that too. With this clip, actually, it fits beautifully in a pair of jeans or shorts as well. You can carry this in a pair of shorts, largely because of that clip. So now onto the construction. The construction of the knife is excellent. As talked about above, piece by piece of the knife, every little aspect of the knife is just fantastically designed and executed on. But overall, all these pieces actually work very well together, which is important too. A lot of knives have great aspects to them, but when you put it all together, certainly in the custom world, you just have something that doesn't tend to work as well as it should. It does work exclusively on a thumb disc, and so it is quite a specialized mode of deployment. You've got to like that. So you'll need to like this. There is no other way to open and close the knife. It's all on the thumb disc. So if you don't like this, and you do tend to, one can put some pressure on the lock bar, and make it a bit tougher, so you do have to practice with this thing. But again, it is a thumb disc. You've got to be comfortable with that. You've got to be happy with that. I was a little surprised just with the working of it when I first got it, but I have grown to really enjoy thumb studs and thumb discs. So let's move into the action for a second. The flip open on this is absolutely stellar, and what you'd expect from John Graham. I mean, it's just, as if you listen to the sound here, you know, it is absolutely a fantastic, smooth, more, as I say, on the hydraulic side, but really, really good. Yeah, so that's the sense of the sound of it. It feels like machinery akin to some sort of high-end hydraulic equipment. I'm not just talking about the Chris Reeve action. I'm talking about the kind of equipment, that a group like Siemens would build. It feels very high-end and premium, without a doubt. Maybe more akin to the door of a high-end luxury vehicle, I would say. Lockup is like an old-school bank vault, as you saw me doing this now with the blade. The lock runs over a ceramic ball detent. I'll see if I can show you the detent ball here actually. It stands quite proud, in fact. So the lock runs over a ceramic detent ball that stands fairly proud, and you can feel the rolling as it moves. It's actually amazingly smooth, the detent ball, and because it stands so proud, I think that probably has a lot to do with that. I don't think I've seen another knife that has a detent ball that actually sticks out that much. It certainly works with authority. It is fantastically beautiful. Lockup is at about 50%. See if you can pick that up. Yeah, it's at about 50%, maybe even a bit more, maybe even about 65%. So there's no risk of any issues with the lock coming undone. It is what I would expect when I'm paying north of $1,000 for a custom knife, no question about it. And it was an expensive item, I must say. What is frustrating is what I mentioned earlier about and that is unlocking the Reeves integral lock, the lock. The combination of the smoothness on the carbon fiber and the lack of ramp on the lock bar does make it a kind of unlock that you'll perfect. Look, you'll get this right over time with muscle memory, no question about it. But it will take that inkling of training the thumb. Now listen, I mean, it's not preparing for the Olympics here. You'll get it in 5 minutes, but it's a thing to think about. And as I was saying earlier, it's a custom. Yeah, that's just what's going to happen. You know, you're going to have to train yourself to want to do that. I mean, if your hands were slippery, if you had something on your hands that was slippery, you would absolutely struggle to unlock the knife. In a production or mid-tech, these things tend to get perfected out. But when you buy a full custom, that is what you're buying. It's not meant to be perfection, although I think with John Graham, he comes pretty close to perfection. I think it's meant to be something, that's come out of the mind of an artist. So I think one needs to be careful when you're buying these custom knives. Know who you're buying from. I do feel better buying a custom knife from a guy like John Graham because he does tend to blend the artistry with the science. And get the mechanics right. When you buy a painting, you don't look at the painting and start measuring the proportions of the eyes to the rest of the facial features and start criticizing these things. It is what it is. You're buying a piece, a custom piece for a reason. So anyway, so that's my thoughts on that. The blade is a gorgeous piece of art, and this is largely what you're paying for. I mean, the blade is where this all happens. I think this is where John Graham's expertise really shines. His abilities really shine. It's a gorgeous blade. He's done a fantastic job here. It's a beautiful clip point shape in the John Graham GL range, as I mentioned. Combination of an acid-edged and polished flats. The spine is the incredible part for me. Coming from Africa originally, this thing reminds me of a Zulu assegai, or what they call a traditional spear. The hardware in the clip has also been the hardware. If you look at the hardware here, sorry, bumping my camera, but if you look at the hardware as well as the clip, and if you're familiar with other John Graham's clips, what you'll notice here, he's got sort of a distressed finish with this, which kind of ties into the whole carbon fiber pattern here. You look at the hardware, it's sort of this distressed finish to the screws, to the pins. These ones too. just this whole distressed look, sort of from an older traditional weapon, a weapon that would have not been forged out of machinery, but maybe, you know, a couple of traditional people working with handmade sort of tools to produce some sort of a traditional weapon, which I think works really, really well overall with the design. It really is a work of art. It's probably the most artistic looking blade I have, but on the downside, this is never going to be a hard use knife for me with the price I paid, as well as the finish. You know, this is cutting pieces of cheese, opening envelopes, etc., etc. It has a nice hollow grind, being a fairly thin blade stock. This is at about 0.09 millimeters, so it's nice thin blade stock. It meets the edge at a mirrored convex shape, convex shape, excuse me. I think I called it a concave shape early on. It's actually a convex shape, which again goes, you know, matches the shape of the scales, sort of gives this outward bulging edge, high mirrored. So I do tend to want to sharpen my own knives to maintain my knives. This is going to be a bit of a problem for your average guy like me who does some sharpening at home. This is not the type of knife. I'll probably end up sending this one away to Josh at Razor's Edge Knives, or one of those guys to actually redo this for me, just because I'm so scared of messing up the blade, even though I do tape off my blades when I sharpen them. Blade steel is CPM 154 cm, as you can see right over there. And I love that it was heat treated by Paul Boss, who is now in his late 70s and retired and isn't doing this much anymore. So it really adds a little bit of heritage to the blade. I do love it. And then of course, you know, Paul Boss has put his traditional maker's mark on there. That is quite a special thing. From my perspective, really cool to look at. Closes the excellent circle for me on the knife for sure. The knife came dead sharp, by the way, as expected. He is great with his blades, John Graham, and it slices absolutely beautiful. And then of course there's the John Graham's maker's mark, probably my favorite maker's mark. I just love the look of it. He has two maker's marks that he uses. This one denotes the full custom, where Graham is written sort of in an inverted arch. And when you get his maker's mark with Graham underneath written in a straight line, that tends to denote his mid-tex. So at $1,000, you know, is there value in a knife like this at $1,000? I think if you like John Graham knives, then definitely it is. I feel like there was value to the knife. It is relatively simple for this kind of money. You know, it's a piece of carbon fiber, titanium, and steel, but it's well done thing with great action. Blade is very special, I think. So for me, when you put it all together, I think yes. You know, I think the carbon fiber itself is some of the classiest carbon fiber I've seen. So I certainly feel as though it is worth the money. Again, looking at that spine, it's an absolutely gorgeous spine. It's not something you very often see on knives. It's got that, you know, as I say, that assegai traditional spear shape to it. So I do like the knife. I do think it's worth that sort of money. Disassembly of the knife to clean and maintain is an absolute dream. Captive pivots are really easy to remove. It does require some blue Loctite. I found the knife loosening up a little bit. I didn't want to use Loctite originally, but then I found the knife loosening up, so I spoke to John Graham over email, and he recommended using some of the blue Loctite, which I did, and that certainly made a big difference. And this was probably, I've owned the knife for about a year and a half. About a year ago was the last time I maintained the knife, and I've had no looseness anymore. And as I said, as you realize from this review, it's a fairly hydraulic bank vault type of lockup and unlock, so you know, it is easy to come loose, and then it's now working well. Hasn't over the last year, no looseness from the Loctite, so that's really worked well for me. I'm very happy with that. Even in closed, I find once the knife's closed, it all really works so well together. It's beautifully, the dimensions, everything about the knife really works quite nicely. Ergonomics, you know, again, very, very personal. I always laugh when I see reviewers on YouTube talking about the ergonomics based on their hand. It's such a mistake, because what works for me is not going to work for somebody else. It really just depends on the shape of your hand, size of your hand, and about 10 other metrics to determine whether a knife is ergonomically good or bad for you. For me, the ergos are really good. Nothing's ever perfect. The trick for me is the mirrored marble carbon fiber, which can be a little tricky in the hands because from the slipperiness. The finger cutouts on the carbon fiber are very well done, as I've talked about, and I think placed perfectly to help me get the grip that I need on the handle. So I would say this balances out some of the slipperiness, and I do enjoy cutting with it. The finger sharpening, the finger choil, the sharpening choil over here, for some, you can choke up and do some more perfected cuts, which is something more or what you probably do with a blade like this, rather than some hard, heavy duty stuff. Great sharpening choil, gives you lots and lots of room to work with over there, moving fairly far to the left of the plunge. Is it a bit too large? Maybe one might criticize that it's a bit too large. Might be. For me, it wouldn't be. Again, I'm not really planning to do any sharpening on this myself, but I do like the fact that I can get my finger in there to do some more precise cuts if I ever need to. Because again, I think that's what you're probably doing with this, rather than cuts that might injure the blade and make you have to start dealing with sharpening. That acid etching is so beautiful. So is the mirroring and the convex edge. I think you probably want to minimize any involvement with dealing with the edge and sort of being able to push off any edge maintenance as far as you possibly can. So I think you do definitely want some room on that. So I think that the cutout for the choil is pretty good. The lanyard hole, which I never use on knives over here. There is no lanyard hole, which is great. I'm not a lanyard guy, so I never need that. Doesn't worry me, but there are people that I know out there that love a lanyard on a knife, so that might be an issue for them. On the whole, fantastic knife, particularly for me, as I'll mention again, I'm a huge John Graham fanboy, and I have been able to snag many of these over the years. And so he doesn't put out a lot of those. So anyhow, let you decide on what you think. Please put some comments down below and give me a thumbs up if you liked it, a thumbs down if it sucked, and I look forward to showing you guys some stuff again soon. Bye.